Welcome to The Leaders Who Care, a podcast powered by Dynamis Group. We are here to give the stage and support to those committed to create a positive and lasting impact, way beyond the profits and margins, the leaders of the world who care for others and serve a bigger purpose. Join us on the journey of creating a better, more caring world. And now to your host, Marian Temelkov.
Happy Wednesday, dear audience, and welcome. Today we have a really inspirational leader and guest that is joining us from Canada, from Toronto. For most of you that are watching The Leaders Who Care for the first time, we're on a mission to bring together some of the most caring leaders from every corner of the world and give them stage and light to share their wisdom and valuable insights that we all crave for and for more better and more caring world. Marc, thank you for joining us today and for making the time.
Thanks for having me.
I was so much looking forward to the episode today and really to find out more about the valuable insights and the inspiration that you have to bring you where you are. Because sometimes when we talk about care, and at least from my perspective, we talk about business and business impacts really communities in a positive way, but not always. And when people look at more the other sides of non-for-profit, for example, or non-business related, they sometimes have it as they may put it in a corner as not necessarily that important, because they're more going after where the money are, so to say. And I just want to really give stage and light that what you do is first of all great service to many, and would love to hear more about shelter movers and what inspired you to get there. But first of all, maybe if you start with a brief introduction, Marc, and with your own family history and how it all came to where you are.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Marian, and I'm a fan of the show, so I'm really pleased to be able to join today. I was not always in nonprofit. In fact, most of my career was not in the charitable sector. I was trained in university in anthropology. I went to law school and left, didn't finish law school. I moved on and did my master's, and then I had a few different careers in policy research. I worked in political office for some politicians, and then I went into the private sector and operated in the energy sector specifically. And while I found those jobs intellectually stimulating and interesting, I really struggled with the meaning behind the work. It was lucrative, it paid well, but I was coming home to my kids. We have 3 kids, my wife and I, and I don't know, I think I had to ask myself who I wanted to be, who I wanted my family and my neighbors and my friends to, not to make it all about me, but I did want to help redefine who I was, and maybe I could use my skills for more than just creating shareholder value. Although that is an interesting challenge. And so I was on parental leave with our 3rd child. My wife is a lawyer, so she took some time off, and then I took some time off. And I was thinking a lot about this sort of question about who am I and what can I do for others and how can I be useful? And came upon this realization that in Toronto and really around the world, the most dangerous place to be is in the home for women and children. It's not out in the street. It's not at the shopping mall or whatever. It's in the home. And I thought about my own kids, and I thought about the life I'm trying to give with my wife to them. And I just, something sparked inside of me. Something said, every parent deserves to give their kids a safe place to sleep at night. And anything less than that, to me, is just unacceptable. And so I started developing this concept for a moving service, realizing that survivors, mainly women and children, but when survivors are trying to get to a safe place, whether it's with police or with a women's shelter or a friend's house, if they can't get out, if they can't leave safely, or if they do leave and they lose everything they own when they leave, then they fall into poverty, and it just creates this awful cycle of suffering for them and their children. So I'm sitting there on parental leave. I'm looking at my new baby. I'm trying to think, I can do something. I'm not a little person. I can move boxes. I can drive a truck. Maybe I can do something very tangible for my community. And I never thought that it would grow to be what it is now. I just wanted to be of service to others, and that's where it really started, and the inspiration of my kids and who I wanted to be as a parent. So that's a little bit about me, and it spurred this idea for this free moving service called Shelter Movers.
No, thank you so much, Mark. And it's really what a great moment and realization, which shows here to people that, yeah, you may not sometimes, because with the leaders who care, but what about if I'm not a leader and if I have not cared that much? Mm. I think what your story demonstrates here, that you can make a decision in a minute if you want to do, and then that can be defined or make a profound difference to your life, but also many people's life. It just takes a moment to make a decision, and if you stick with it, it really shows. But what I love about this is you followed your passion, and really that you wanted to contribute. And when you give your passion and you want to really make a difference, things start to grow. Things start to really, there's a joy there. When there's a joy, you start to receive and really make a difference. But how, you said you have three children in Toronto. It's how do you sustain your family, just from practical point of view? Because when you do these kind of things, is that what amount of time of yours is focused on this? Is there any other, in other words, income streams? How could people do that? Because we all want to, in some shape or form, contribute to different causes. The question, of course, is there the right way to do it? Or what is your experience?
Yeah, that's a critical question. And I think it raises, for me, the contribution of my wife, Megan. My wife's a lawyer. She works very, very hard. And I think if I was a single parent, I probably would not have had the luxury to be able to take the financial risk of starting a nonprofit. When the idea came to me and I started developing Shelter Movers, I was still working in corporate, and I had, after I was leading these moves for women in my community with a couple of volunteers, and I was renting trucks after work, going to do this at night, and testing the model and refining the model over and over again. There's no scenario where I could have ever done that without somebody in my life who said, "I'll stay home, make sure the kids are safe," or after working a long day herself, she said, "I think you're onto something. I'm going to help you do it." And so I get a lot of credit and a lot of praise for starting Shelter Movers, but people very quickly forget that if my wife wasn't there to pick up all the pieces that I was dropping to chase this dream, this absolutely would never happen. So I think that's the first ingredient is a support from someone who loves you and who shares the vision. And then the second part is I didn't sleep very much for the first couple of years. I started this in 2016. And as I said, working full time and then caring for our kids with my wife and then doing this in the evenings. I was probably not living a very balanced life at first, if I'm being very honest. It was a lot of sweat and a lot of work. And I surrounded myself with people much smarter than me. People who are experts in the sector of violence against women, who understand how to work with women who've experienced trauma. And, to be honest, somebody who looks or sounds like me can't just walk into a women's shelter and say, "Hey, I'm here to help." It's not always appropriate. So I had to surround myself with women leaders, with female leaders who were comfortable endorsing this idea and championing this for me when others might discount it, because I was the one delivering the message. So I was very careful not to make this about Mark. I'm making this about the families that we serve, and I'm making it about the mission and the vision that we have for the organization, so that we can all rally around an idea that's bigger than any one person. And it removes the stigma, it removes any preconceived notions about who's involved if it's just the idea. And so people can attach themselves and their passion to that. So yeah, the support of my wife, long hours of work in the beginning, surrounding myself with people who are credible and knowledgeable and who care, and then urging people to attach themselves to the idea of shelter movers rather than to following the individual leader, because humans are fallible, but ideas we can hold up, and they can stay, they can stay real, they can be very attractive, and we can follow those.
This is well. First of all, I want to honor your wife here, and I know also we've been, both of us, including myself, been blessed to have that support, and thank God for that. Really, above all, that's really it's not easy even nowadays to have that unconditional support and love. With It's more of who do you become along the journey, and having that really more than just a person next to you, but an ally and a friend. So really honor your contribution for shelter movers of your wife and everyone around you that has really endorsed you to get to where you are. And just talking about the impact, and this is of significance to your community. And what triggered that really in decision when you decided to start Shelter Move? Was it something to do with your local community? Was there an incident, or how did it all happen?
Yeah, I don't have any personal experience with abuse. I grew up in the most normal, boring Canadian family. My parents are wonderful people. They love me and my sister. So I can't speak from personal experience, but in Canada and in most countries, in Europe in particular, violence against women is a pervasive problem. In Canada, a woman or girl is killed every other day. Every 2 days, somewhere in the country, a woman is murdered, usually at the hands of their partner or a family member. So this is not abuse. Violence against women is not a problem that is absent in any community. I'm sure that's true in Europe as well. It's a pervasive problem, and for that reason, I just felt that the biggest impact I could have for families around me was to look at a problem that was touching everybody, and this really is. It's gender-based violence is present everywhere. And so if I could have an impact there, maybe I can touch as many people as I possibly could in a positive way. And I think the stories that I began hearing from the women I was serving really brought it home for me. These were women from all walks of life. And that's the other thing I thought. I thought abuse against women was something that happened only to women in low income situations, or women who were new to the country, or something like that. The truth is, violence against women touches everyone. It's definitely more pronounced among low income families, or women who live with a disability, or LGBTQ women in particular. But because it affects so many different people from so many different walks of life, I thought this is something I could touch. And my vision really was to improve the lives not only of people in Canada, but eventually as shelter movers began to grow, I realized this could be something that could be replicated and in fact improve the quality of life of women and kids across the country. And then maybe even beyond Canada. And we can maybe talk about that later on as well. There's been some work there too. So I think the pervasiveness of the problem really struck me as a solution. I started my community here in Toronto, but when I started getting phone calls from Ottawa and Vancouver and Montreal, I realized I was onto something, and that this was because Shelter Movers is the only service of its kind in Canada for sure, maybe anywhere. I had sort of found a very niche need. And if I could fulfill that need and replicate fast enough with the intellectual property, if this was a business, Shelter Movers is first to market. We have all the intellectual property. We have, sadly, a near endless demand for our service, and an opportunity to grow without any competition. So it's the Venn diagram of Venn diagrams when it comes to organizational development and prosperity. And I noticed that pretty quickly when women's shelters were calling me and saying, "Thank goodness you're here. When can you start in this city or that city?" I said, "Well, we haven't thought about that. We don't know anyone." And they said, "Don't worry, we'll help build it with you. We need this. You're saving lives. Let's get to it right away." And so it started this snowball effect, I think, that you were sort of alluding to earlier. When you show you care, when you show you have a plan, and you show that you've tested it and you're getting results, when those three things come together and it's communicated properly, people start taking it on for themselves and they start owning it. And then Shelter Movers sort of grew out that way, very organically.
How big is Shelter Movers today, Marc?
So Shelter Movers operates in 7 major cities. We've been around for 6 years now, so we usually add 1 city per year. Our current annual budget's about $3.2 million. We move 130 families every month in those 7 cities. We have 2,100 volunteers and about 50 staff, full-time and part-time staff, to manage the volunteers and do all the administration. And I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of our growth. Most nonprofits in Canada rarely exceed $1 million in their budget, and they rarely have more than 2 employees. Most nonprofits around the world are very small operations. Like in the business community, most businesses are small businesses. And so to exceed that $1 million 2-person employee threshold is, I'm very proud of that. I think our vision is to be available to any woman or child in Canada, period. And to do that, we need to grow 10 or 20-fold if we're going to be serious about this. The organization has not doubled in size every year, but for the first 4 years it was. And so that level of rapid exponential growth obviously comes with a number of risks and opportunities. But I think with the right people in place and the right organizational structure, we can scale. We can continue to scale at a similar pace, not doubling every year, but doing 30 to 40% growth is achievable.
What can we do not to scale that?
Well, that would be the dream, wouldn't it? Shelter Movers exists with the hope that we are never ever needed again. I would love to go out of business. It would be wonderful. I think
that's the dream, but the question is, there's a number of questions that comes to mind. For me, is always, when these families fall apart, it's always really a last resort, and the question is, could that be ever prevented? Is there programs where that can be avoided on that front? Really, the prevention element of such and awareness. Is there any areas or programs that Shelter Movers are looking at or thinking of?
Well, we commonly say in the organization that violence against women is not a women's issue, actually. It's a men's issue. This is about men hurting women. And it's important to call that out because I think it provides men with an opportunity to decide what side of history they want to be on. And I believe the volunteers, the men who volunteer at Shelter Movers have made the decision to speak out and to take action against this as part of their own identity in their community, to say, being a man in Canada in 2022 means that you're an ally with the women in your community and in your life. That's what being a real man is. And so it provides them with an opportunity to do something tangible. So, I think while our service is reactive because the violence has already occurred, we are also preventive in the sense that we are helping those little boys and little girls to help get out of the violent situation sooner. My hope is that particularly the little boys that we have moved out, most of our clients have a child under the age of 8 or they're pregnant. It's very common. And so who is that little boy going to be 20 years from now? Did he get out soon enough that maybe he's not going to have the same issues or the same trauma that his father may have had? Is there an opportunity to help set him on a different trajectory?
Yes.
And I think the science supports the notion that children heal from trauma much faster the sooner in life you get them out of it. The effects of trauma last much longer for a teenager than it would maybe for a 1 or 2 year old. And we know that women who experience abuse will leave their partners on average 6 times before they can finally break free. But what if she uses shelter movers when it's her 2nd or 3rd time leaving? What if she can leave sooner and stay away from him, after a much shorter period of time? What will that do for the kids in terms of their own development? We are gathering evidence now that using shelter movers results in a break in the cycle of violence. And that's very important because of the long-term impacts on society. And as a leader, I'm regularly discussing that long-term impact with our volunteers and our staff. We help today, but shelter movers helps tomorrow as well because of the change in the trajectory of that family.
No, that's a great point of view that you and sharing that's approach here, because you're right, preventing in a way that this being passed on to the children and generation makes a big difference. I think it's really important here. And you're right, maybe that's are you thinking even of a programs where maybe you could help men, maybe in that really and the question is, I'm sure there's statistics or really areas that makes you think of what are the reasons often for this to occur. Can they be healed? Can they be prevented? Can they be predicted? So more awareness is brought to men, and also men can have more help if they're aware, because the first thing is the difference starts when you become aware of it, because some of them may not be aware. They may doing it, but then they don't think they have a problem.
Yeah, very true. And to your previous question, I think in when I was presenting the concept for shelter movers, I wanted to make sure that we were not duplicative in what we were offering. I wanted to create something new and different that was filling a gap. So in Canada, there are services that support men, discussion groups and group counseling opportunities for men to talk about their feelings and talk about their own trauma. Those exist. We have on one end. On the other end, we have the police and law enforcement that tries to stop the criminals. But somewhere in the middle, nothing's happening for those kids, as you said, for the next generation to not become the previous generation. So it's very important to me that we create something that is unique and that is filling a specific gap, understanding that there are other services that support women and kids. So, for example, I could have, at one point I wanted to develop a housing solution to help women get safe housing. So I was going to attract investors using social bonds. We would buy apartment buildings, and women would move in and live in these buildings. But I realized very quickly that in Canada, the housing market is absolutely saturated. People are trying to build all the time, everywhere, and that I was just jumping into the fray with people who've done this much more than I have and are more knowledgeable or have faster connections. I wasn't going to make my mark if I was going to do the same thing as everybody else. I need to create something different. And I think what we hear frequently is that shelter movers is so unique and one of a kind that it also creates new opportunities for funding, new volunteer opportunities, and it's easier to promote when it's not just one of the same. And so that helps us be more competitive when we're applying for grants and donations. We can really highlight the fact that no one else is doing what we do. And the reality, if I may, for the women we're serving, is that in the absence of shelter movers, women and kids are grabbing what they can and they're leaving out the back door at night. It's a very sad and very dangerous and dramatic situation. And I think it's very easy for your listeners and for most people to understand when there's no one there to help you and you have to help yourself. it gets messy, and it's very unstable. And so I hope for shelter movers that it will become a bit of a standard across Canada, that everyone will just know when you need to get out of a bad situation, you just call shelter movers and they'll have a team in front of your door by the end of the day, kind of thing. And that's what we're working towards. I think that's what our employees envision as well.
This is really fantastic. And the question I have is, what can communities do to really spread that initiative, and especially outside Canada?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is exactly what you said, which is awareness. I think communities need to be aware that violence against women is happening in their community, and I think they need to accept that as a difficult truth for us to accept, especially for guys, that we are not contributing to the solution if we're ignoring it. That plays right into the hands of abusers. They don't want us to talk about it. They don't want us to be aware. They don't want men to call each other out for poor behavior or sexist behavior. So that's the first step that communities can do. And then the next one, I think, is to contact sheltermovers.com and start a conversation. We've had volunteers, international students who've come to Canada, and they volunteered with us. And then as they're finishing their term in Canada, they contact me and say, I'm going back to my home country, and we don't have anything like this, and I need to start this in my home country because I think my community needs it there too. And so we've started conversations, particularly in France and the US and Israel specifically. Young people, 20 to 30-year-old people who are inspired by what they experienced in Canada, and they realize that this is a logistics organization, and that can be replicated if you have the right resources in your home country. So the opportunity to serve families locally, almost anywhere in the world, really, if you have volunteers and some trucks and a safe place to store the client's belongings, you can probably open something pretty close to shelter movers. So it's a highly replicable model, and because we've developed standards of practice and quality monitoring systems, we can help communities, offer a very high level of service with a lot of compassion at a very, very reasonable internal cost. Our service is free, always free. Our clients don't pay. And the private sector has a role to play in making that a reality.
What is your greatest challenge, Marc, that you've experienced?
Oh, I have lots of challenges. This has not been easy at all. A lot of challenges. I think the obvious ones, Shelter Movers is successful because we are able to recruit volunteers. We as I said, we have about 2,100 volunteers in Canada, but we need a constant influx of new volunteers to keep helping to increase the capacity. So we've had moments during the pandemic where everybody was staying home, nobody could move, nobody could help. We almost had to shut our doors. So having a constant flow of volunteers is a challenge, and keeping them trained and monitoring them is very important. Obviously, what we do does cost money. We need to rent trucks or lease trucks. We need storage facilities. We have private security that attends some of our moves because there's a degree of risk to what we do. And police are not always available. So we have bodyguards for some of our moves to make sure the situation is safe. So finding funders who will provide not just a one-time payment, but a commitment to a long-term relationship and provide that steady funding so we can continue to be in a position to rent more trucks and move more families. And then I think the third major challenge is managing our brand and our reputation. It would be very easy for a woman who we served, if we didn't do a good job, it would be very easy for her to file a complaint online or say something about the organization and threaten or erode our brand in the eyes of our partners in the community who refer survivors to us. Especially in an age where everyone has access to a social media platform, everyone has access to probably a journalist or a sympathetic journalist or something. We manage very carefully our brand because we need the trust of society. We need a social license to operate, And if that social license is eroded or hurt, no one will call us and no one will use our service. And it doesn't matter how much money we raise or how many volunteers we have. If women and kids don't believe that they'll receive compassionate help from us, they're not going to show up, and we're dead in the water. So I think a lot about every single move is a chance for our brand to take a hit. So we talk about to our volunteers very frequently about what they can do to honor our clients and honor the shelter movers' reputation.
And I can imagine that is really challenging, because how do you assure that level of consistency and, in your training program, because so many volunteers, and in this situation is anything can go wrong.
That's right. Yeah, a lot can go wrong. In the obvious other risks are the physical risks of somebody getting hurt or an abuser confronting our volunteers in some way. And we take safety and security extremely seriously, and we're very risk averse. But things still go wrong. Things happen not all the time, but things do happen. So we have a continuous quality monitoring and improvement loop that occurs in the organization. So every move ends with a debrief with the volunteers or the staff who did the move, and we collect data on the move. And the purpose of that is obviously to identify trends or learnings or best practices that we can apply for the next move. And so the idea here is that every move should make the next move better. And we disseminate those best practices on a move right across all of our sites. And then our national team monitors using key performance indicators for quality and client feedback to make sure that all the chapters are operating more or less at the same level. Geography should never be a factor in the quality of service. If you eat a hamburger at a fast food restaurant, it's the same hamburger in one city as it is in the other. At shelter movers, a woman will receive the same level, or should receive the same level, of compassion and efficiency and reliability, whether she's in Vancouver on the West Coast or Halifax on the East Coast. Geography is not we have to control for that.
No, thank you for sharing. And it's I want to focus on really the positive impact that this is creating. What are maybe share one or two stories that really made a profound impact on people's lives, that I'm sure you have a lot to share, but just something that touched you personally, that I guess we do a lot of those things to personal fulfillment, and these stories are making a profound difference for your sponsors, donators. Well, what is something that's a story that you really resonated and stays with you?
I go on one move per month now. I used to do 3 or 4 a week, but now I do one move a month because I want to stay, engaged. And I did a move not too long ago, and it was a move where the woman had been in shelter for 9 months, and she'd been in hiding basically from her partner. And we were moving her out of the shelter into her new home in the community. So we'd had her items in our storage facility for 9 months, and her kids, she had 2 kids, and I tell our new volunteers, when we arrived at her new place and we're unloading all of her furniture and we're opening the boxes and the toys are in these boxes, these kids are running around the toys like they've never seen them before. It's like it's the holidays, it's Christmas or the birthday, and they're opening as if they've never had it before, and they're so happy. And we're standing in the living room with the client, and she says, she kind of looks back to us and says, I'm not going back. We said, no, you're not going back. She said, I did this. And we said, yeah, you did this. You did this for yourself, and you did this and she said, I did this for my kids. And I tell our volunteers, be in the room with her in that moment and watch her shoulders come down as she calms down, as she stands a little bit taller, and be in the room with her when she's realizing what she's done for herself and the courage that she's shown for herself. And you won't be able to refuse doing another move. That it becomes extremely fulfilling to be able to be present in that moment for that person. We have the honor of being with people who are making very major decisions for their lives, not lightly. And we have the privilege of helping them along on their journey. Our clients are the heroes of their own story. And we have the opportunity to watch someone change the direction of their life. And I would say that is that's what keeps me going, and that's why I do these moves, is to meet people who are in situations I will probably never have to be in, and meet people who are making incredibly courageous decisions for themselves and their family on issues I might never have to face. And I think that's particularly important for our guys to see that, because they might not face these problems in their life, but these women do, and I think it's very inspiring. So I think of that client a lot, and I think of her kids a lot, and it was a good day, and I wish I could.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm just thinking here that even though you move from a corporate to a non-for-profit, and I basically see a lot. I've been privileged to talk to some of the really greatest leaders and really powerful business entrepreneurs or leaders of companies that could be even multi-billion. And sometimes, of course, what you may see is it's great when they can see the vision and passion, but not always, that success is fulfilling. So, and probably when you have a failure, you failed, and you can get back on your feet, and you can make it. It's not a failure. You can learn from it. If you can learn, it's not a failure. But if you have successful with no fulfillment, it's probably the ultimate failure. So what is your lessons or advice to those leaders in business, especially, that may be very successful in what they do, but maybe they're not quite, satisfied, fulfilled, because you've made a transition, just speaking from your heart. What do you think is, how do you find that fulfillment and joy?
I meet the people you just described very frequently. So in my dealings with shelter movers, I'm also a fundraiser. So I'm speaking to businesses, and I'm talking to them about why they need to invest and donate to our work. And the conversation often comes to the leader's own. Often they've contacted us because the leader's not feeling fulfilled in their work, and they want to make a donation because they think it will make them feel better about their own lives or the lives of their employees when all they're focusing on is profit and growth. And so I'm very quick to say that while we always need and appreciate their business's donation, what I really am asking for is for their time and their ear and their hearts, because we don't just ask for donations from our business leaders. We spend time with their employees, talking with them about the issues that our organization faces, and it gives them an opportunity to contemplate the issues that our organization faces. It gives them a chance to volunteer and do things outside of work that gives them fulfillment. And the business leaders in particular that we talk to, who may be feeling a little bit less fulfilled in their work, they are the ones who will join our board of directors, or they'll sponsor a particular project or a particular area of growth. So they take it on as a bit of a project for themselves. But in their own work, we talk a lot about caring about your employees on the personal level, caring about their private lives, knowing the names of their kids, showing them that their quality of life outside of work is important, as or more important than their productivity in the office. Because coming to the office, after a sad or difficult evening because your child is sick, a boss who cares about that, who really actually cares about that kid's wealth, that buys so much loyalty, and it takes business to another level, because it's not really about making money anymore. It's about people who care about each other, trying to reach a goal together. And whether it's profit or whether it's moving families, it doesn't really matter. The point is that my employees, I hope, know that I care about what happens to them out after 5 o'clock, because I want them to be happy people. I want them to be fulfilled. And my job as a leader is to show them at least that I care. And if I can help them with that stuff, I will, because what they're doing for shelter movers is enormous, and that puts a lot of responsibility on me as a leader to show them that my responsibility to them as people is enormous. Yeah.
Which is the next question that we have actually here from Stoyan, who Mark, what can leaders of companies and entrepreneurs, executives do to support you in your cause more proactively?
Well, I as I mentioned earlier, I think it's three things. I think especially men in leadership positions need to be very vocal about their position on violence against women. That men need to call this out and say, this is unacceptable. I don't stand with this. This is an old way of thinking that I don't support, and our corporation does not support. So I think taking a public stance on this issue is critical. But that's performative if we don't do anything about it. So talk is cheap. It matters, but the real action comes when you take action. And so I think contacting local women's shelters, contacting sheltermovers.com, and having a discussion about how employees can be encouraged and senior leadership can be encouraged to whether it's lunch and learns, in the office, or going on a move together as an employee group to have an experience together, and then tying that back to a financial contribution. And I hate to bring it back to money, but it's an obvious requirement for us to do what we do. We don't have profit in our organization, and so awareness, engagement of your employees and leadership, and a financial contribution are very tangible ways that every business can. And I would say if they're smart, long-term minded businesses, they really need to do that, because the number of employees I speak to who say, I love working here because my employer cares about you, shelter movers. My employer made a donation to you because they want you to do better. And I'm proud to work at a place that believes in that and doesn't just talk. They actually walked the walk. So an employee, if only for employee retention, I think it would be wise for corporations to very publicly make real contributions.
And a final question here of what is your vision for more caring and positive world? What is your really dream that you would like to see one day?
My dream. I think about this a lot, actually, to be honest. I think our society globally is being very strongly encouraged to think about themselves and their own way of advancing. And I think we need to start talking more about service, true service to other people, especially people we don't know. It's not easy for people to remember serving a stranger can feel awkward. It can feel pointless. It can feel confusing or difficult, but we serve strangers every day. And I can tell you from personal experience that it is, especially when you don't know the person, that you touch their life, because you have no skin in the game. You're doing it because it's the right thing to do. And I think service is a theme I hope we talk more about.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You mentioned something earlier, which we honored your wife as a great, really leader and person that was stand behind you. Who is one other person that's the unsung hero, so to say? Who is someone that may not be so popular, but is doing a great service to the world and cares?
When I came up with the concept for this free moving service, I didn't know who to talk to. I'd never been to a women's shelter. I'd never talked to any people. I cold called a local women's shelter here in Toronto, and a woman by the name of Vicky Sage answered the phone. Vicky was a frontline worker at a women's shelter. These are people who work extremely long hours. They're not paid nearly what they're worth, and they're saving lives every single day by supporting these women. And so Vicky Sage answers the phone. I said, I don't know you and you don't know me, but I have this idea. I think I want to help women leave homes. And she immediately said, yeah, obviously that's a great idea. Where do we get started? And she took a chance on me. and as I said earlier, taking a chance on a stranger can be awkward, but she took a chance on me, and she really was a silent partner in the organization and built our processes. So I'd call out Vicky Sage and anyone who works in an underappreciated area of work. The guy or the girl in the mailroom in that big corporation who never gets to talk to the higher ups, that person is coming in and showing up every day, and they deserve a lot of praise.
Well, we honor Vicky Sage and all the unsung heroes, and thank you so much for being with us today, Marc. It's been really a great to have you today. And what is the best way for companies or leaders to reach out to you? Is it via LinkedIn, or is there any specific way you like them to get in contact?
Yeah, so sheltermovers.com is the easiest way, but Shelter Movers on all platforms. I think we're going on TikTok soon, if I'm not mistaken, but certainly LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, Shelter Movers, very easy to find us, and fire us a message. We'd love to have a conversation.
Excellent. Well, keep spreading that care and positivity and hope for people. And thank you for being a leader who cares, Marc, and joining us today.
Thank you, Marian.